Great to be here. So I'm going to briefly give you a preview of our essay that's in the collection, and it's very apt time to be thinking about green spaces as we face the prospect of possibly more lockdowns. And we begin with the reflection that COVID, as we all know, has really woken us up to the value of our green spaces and the role of nature in actually recovering from the crisis. And sort of polls have shown that, like, 3/4 of people nationally have agreed that nature's really been a source of comfort to them during the crisis. And there's so much evidence, as we all know, that green spaces make us happier and healthier, mentally, physically, ecologically. There's so many benefits that come from them. However, access to green space is not shared equally at all in our society. And in fact, there's a paradox. And the paradox is that disadvantaged groups, they appear to gain actually the most benefits from green spaces and the most benefits from accessing them, but they are the people who have the least access to green spaces. And so resolving this paradox is therefore central to really building a fairer society. So if we look at underlying dynamics, looking at what, why, how has this arisen? And two that we explore are, so the first one is physical alienation, and the central fact here is that distance really matters. How far you are away from a green space really matters. And the second one is psychological alienation, and that's more subtle. That's that sense of, like, is this space for me? Can I participate in it? Do I have, am I properly connected to it? And one thing I really wanted to highlight, and I think everyone here is really aware of it, is the importance of the moment that we're in right now, because the choices that we make now and in the next 6 to 18 months as we build back our societies after COVID will really have really massive ripple effects on the rest of the decade and beyond, because the choices we make, the structures we put in, the funding that comes in is not going to come around again. And so there's a real, almost like a juncture, choice point here about it. How are we going to rebuild? What are going to be our principles for rebuilding? And so we used just a bit of futures thinking to explore two possible trajectories, but directions you might end up in, say at around 2030, depending on what are the mindsets that we use, and the principles that shape our choices. The first one we call the discipline trajectory, and this imagines what might happen if an ethos of control and surveillance prevails. This is the one they're familiar with right now, which is justified. We must maintain public health and security, we must control, we must monitor. And we thought, well, what happens if this ethos prevails and intersects with existing trends that we already had pre-pandemic that already pointed to the erosion of really truly public spaces? We saw this would probably create many more barriers to inclusive access. We've already seen signals like park benches designed so that homeless people can't sleep on them, more privatised spaces around corporate premises, selling off of community green spaces to plug budget gaps. And so there's a real risk that these trends become intensified and we sleepwalk into intensified inequality of access, which obviously we don't want. And then the second trajectory we looked at is much more positive, and we call it transform, and this is a bit more provocative. And this is a trajectory where the building back is based around a completely different mindset and a set of principles that are regenerative, participatory, and distributive, and where basically the opportunity that we have now for a deep reset is taken. So we created it, and you have to read the essay, I'm not going to read the glimpse now, but we created almost a provocative glimpse of what the future might look like in this trajectory. It's from a snapshot of, like, someone in a social housing estate in 2030, where they've used these principles to completely reconfigure the access that residents have to green spaces and their participation in shaping them. And it is, if you read it, it's very different today. It's quite provocative, but almost everything in it is actually based on real signals of change that we have found exist today. You could almost call seeds of possible futures. So things like already existing, like participatory systems that have been put into practice in different places in Europe and Taiwan, things like Miyawaki forests, so things that are niche, but that could be drawn upon. And that's really in a nutshell. And so it's basically, the essay is a look at the existing systemic dynamics, a call to use this opportunity to really reset at a deep level, to be aware that this is a chance to reset, and then the use of futures for a bit of creative imagining about what might be possible to stretch people's idea of possibility, basically. Thank you.